gas available for fossil fuel-free, near-zero discharge research and energy as phased investments. Reallocate fossil fuel-based so-called renewable, alternative and advanced energy loopholes, credits, and subsidies to clean coal scrubbers, cellulose wood-like pellets, and nuclear fusion tech. Establish environmental impact monitoring and cleanup fees for new methods, including hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking. Repurpose biofuel and advanced technology production tax credits for non-fossil fuel startup or small business cellulosic biofuel equipment purchase, investment, and vehicle manufacturing loans. Reallocate energy-efficient and water conservation tax credits for new home and business construction, underground drip sprinklers, and waterless urinals as mandatory subsidies. Reallocate issuable bonds as government-backed loans for productivity uses, with the lowest interest and longest term first offered to small business. Enact toxic spill and loss liability expense as a mandatory trust fund for cleanup or reward as bonus when met annual objective goes unused. Eligible uses for such will include ecologically sustainable structures, catastrophic weather-resistant buildings, and small business desalinized water supply projects, and companies that achieve 95% recycling of waste and scrap and less than 3% discharge of total pollutants will pay a maximum of 10% corporate tax, whereas all others will pay a flat tax of 35%, excluded from loopholes and subsidies. More provisions of law will be implemented to bring balance to corporate schemes, and anyone who can afford to pay their fair share will contribute what they must. As a finance executive for many years, I've created and maintained many corporate budgets, and with cost information made available to me, it was determined the federal government can generate a surplus of as much as $285 billion for investment in jump-starting sustainable economic growth over the next 5 years. The question is, what industry should we invest in? Our horseless carriages and flying hollow tubes may have breastplates of iron to transport people in their bellies safely, but they breathe fire like dragons and fill the sky with their toxic plague, requiring the purchase of more and more of the black tar that cools and lubricates the earth, from self-appointed rulers in caves that wish to do us harm, while its plume spills, killing a third of the life in the Gulf Sea. I don't like it. Too much work to try to fix. Why not just change the source of the fuel problem then? We tried something else called corn ethanol because that is what grows well here, and was something big agriculture could get its hands on to control. But in order to be profitable, distillers had to mix the leftover pulp in with the cattle feed supply. Before most knew it, we had economic chaos. Newsweek in May 2007 reported famine in Africa as it cost a day's wage for a loaf of bread. A man in Tunisia lit himself on fire because he couldn't afford to buy groceries to sell, setting off what has become known as the Arab Spring. As soy farming became profitable, more plant estrogens were introduced into the food supply, causing a disruption in male hormonal balance. Meanwhile, oil companies started buying up corn distilleries to corner the market away from biofuels. Then oil and gas companies found a new way to get energy from the ground by fracking. Earthquakes started happening in diverse places as toxic chemicals found their way into drinking water supply, and temperatures rose globally. You've had your chance to find sustainable energy supply and you failed. Why, you only wanted to control to take advantage of the people. You had no intention of sustaining the people's economy. You lied to get the work. So oil, gas, mining, and energy will take a back seat for a while, as wholesale fuel and energy prices will be suspended at 2012 rates until biofuels come online. The hallmark of this reform is the concerted effort to reduce tailpipe emissions, dependence on foreign oil, and return to a manageable CO2 level of 350 parts per million. The people need to know we have such plans. We're going to build energy plants in places where there are old waste dumps, repair breaches in the nation's bridges, restore roads to be safe to drive again, and for people to walk at night. Give me a hammer and I'll do it. Let's nail them all up. We're going to build a country of freed people, freed homes, freed communities, and freedom, just as it was true in Lincoln's time. That's what I call a freed market enterprise. While we're at it, we also ought to overhaul one of our nation's oldest institutions. We're spending just as much on military as we are running government and entitlements combined. To update our military and get the spending under control, we need to take a look at the changes to warfare. This is supposed to be a time of peace, not war. The season we are in does not match what we are experiencing. Terrorism, as you may know, has become a serious concern. What you may not know is why. Under the threat of jihadi terrorism, all nations are at risk. It is clear there is no country immune from it. The enormous range and destructive power of these individual fighters has transformed the debate of what constitutes a battlefield. The distinction between soldiers and civilians is blurred, so it is imperative to understand their strategy of warfare. In wars of the past, there were only a few ways to attack, by land, air, or sea. Along came guerrilla warfare tactics and custom-made bombs used by terrorists, and entirely new methods of striking a target became possible. War became no longer confined to the battlefield with the reinvention of psychological attacks and propaganda fronts. America is good at building technologically superior weapons, such as bombs. But our strengths work against us, as they did in Pearl Harbor in World War II. We feel protected by distance, confidence our bombs and security will protect us against an invasion and will shield us from any incoming threat. This is illusionary and short-sighted. Antiquated and nearsighted thinking lead us to rely on our military prowess and might, while our guns misfire in the desert and whistleblowers expose the deaths brought on by the Humvee lobby. Terrorists, on the other hand, hide in crowded apartment buildings and launch rockets at our friends from schoolyards. Even when we score a hit, we lose. Currently, the banned ISIS poses the biggest threat. Harry St. John Philby, an expatriated British official, worked with Abdelaziz to oppose Ottoman rule. The result was a Saudi Arab state and a sympathetic form of the Wahhabism religion. ISIS is an attempt to return to the Puritan fundamentals of Wahhabism and exorcise all other religions by force. This fight is one of ideology and cannot be won by killing. Blood feuds and extermination campaigns have never worked. History is littered with remnants that rise up with each successive generation. Much like ISIS is doing now, taking peace from the earth by genocide, Hitler exploited arbitrary political boundaries and generations of religious infighting in Yugoslavia. The so-called axis of evil is in the mind. Countries are not evil. Rulers and influential people that think of evil deeds, whether upon citizens, the economy, or the environment, are, as what the Greeks call, Apollyon. It is that kind that must charter for good will upon every person in every country, or be brought back into right standing. Just as ISIS, in telling its members that peace comes from blood, so bankers that steal from homeowners and corporations that pollute are the axis of evil today. Rather, blood is atoned by the pure selfless sacrifice of a willing innocent. But the stains of a helpless victim for someone else's gain, whether in this life or the hereafter, cries out. Only whenever our own national security and economy was threatened did we act against Syria, as we have with incidents in Iraq and Iran over the years. Blood speaks. Assad's regime murdered over 200,000 men, women, and children while we watched it play out on the news. We issued the threat of economic sanctions and hid behind a rhetoric of diplomacy and considered how it would make us look to historians. How selfish. This is not a pageant show. The presidency means much more than one man's interests. Blood is crying out for the protection of the innocent, yet we didn't bother to work out the details for the best outcome till now. Shame on leaders who forget why they are in office. So we should get back to the task of keeping watch over the nations. The order of the day will be as it was with the Founding Fathers, piracy on the high seas. Policing does not mean dominance by superior imperialism or subjecting people against their will, as misguided domino theory suggests. Rather, our manifest destiny is to intercede for the people by interposing higher law and will on their aggressors and sacrificing unrestrained corporate desires so the people might have the opportunity to excel and pursue their God-given purpose. And that destiny does not come at the expense of the less fortunate, but comes by way of mutual cooperation, as it is the desire of this administration to aid companies committed to equitable opportunity. I'm announcing it is now and forevermore the duty of this government to ensure the protection of civilians, as best we can, whenever we can, wherever we should, just as we support defensible borders and the right of the people to autonomous rule. We will preserve freighters of precious cargo and undermine terrorist operations. We will employ an oil spot strategy to secure and hold areas cleared of terrorist activity. However, as in the guns of August, our military commanders today are making the mistake of assuming they are in tune with the strategies of the enemy, without taking into account the dynamics of how everything has changed. We refuse to learn the real lesson of Vietnam, psychological warfare, and now we're failing on the propaganda front. We must stop inviting war for the sake of war, because it's not helping. Military spending then would be better reallocated towards protection of civilians in locations under siege to acts of terror, giving much needed attention to deconstructing ideology and offering a strong guiding presence to local governments there. And profit will be taken out of war making and security as touching armaments, munitions, and vehicles made for government to discourage corporate lobby from providing the wrong tools for the wrong job. Instead, we will allocate defense spending proportionate to appropriate use, tools, supply, and property to minimize casualty and death. We will halt production of spit and polish weapons and clumsy bombs in favor of desert-conditioned mechanisms, corner-peering rifles, MRAP vehicles, and room-localized, pinpoint-accurate micro-detonation systems designed to protect civilians. We will do the same with fossil fuels, reallocating profits from governmental use and money spent on falsified and tainted marketing research propaganda. These will be entrusted on behalf of the American people as restitution for avoidable pollution and specific income damages. Now, peace is not just the presence of justice. It is the absence of conflict. It is not merely the goal, it is the destination. So protection of the people cannot come at the expense of liberty. And as a nation, we have been given this test of half-heartedness, and we will pass. For to everyone who has been given a great task, they will be given abundance. Our Constitution doesn't allow holding on to electronic data without due process, and the people have protested spying on American citizens. It's not a direction the people permit and must be dismantled. Security updates for electronic devices have never been about the people's security. One of the sons of my good friend George Mason was incarcerated because someone hacked his computer. But the judge was not merciful because a Trojan horse-type virus was found. What is the government doing convicting people before they appear in court? The government must be subject to law if it is to hand it out. So we will follow the constitutional method for acquiring warrants of electronic papers and effects. Corruption has infiltrated every part of our nation's government. With that, none of our nation's past should remain hidden, but be open for the world to see the government as it truly is. As a reminder, we are not invincible or infallible. Therefore, I'm announcing the Freedom of Information Act shall be forevermore extended to all government and its automatic release shortened to 5 years. We will periodically remove security protocols and dump all of our secrets onto the internet in a manner that keeps honest people honest and forces the shadows to have nowhere to hide. Holding an alleged law over the people to force everyone in the U.S. to take a course of action is an ultimatum, not a choice. So security at the expense of freedom is control by fear, not protection. I therefore order mercenary cells and paramilitary to stand down that were hired by the government to hasten carrying out violent acts against citizens. No, we will not enter a period of civil unrest. We will enter this period of great rest. Freedom is not negotiable. Certainly, in our wariness of constitutional conflicts, there may be danger of pitfalls. But there is a promise of great reward and favor if we act honorably and justly. We will be accountable to the people, as our forefathers intended, And as often as we hope, there is a bright, beautiful future waiting for us at the end of every day. I understand we're not currently ready for peace. But peace must come when it is its season, or generations will face perpetual fright, poverty, and divorce. Media has been vigilant in preparing the brotherhood generation for war. They have glorified zombies and peddled divorce. Our children will not